What's going on tonight?
Barbecue.
Oh, where's it at?
Buds.
Buds?
Buds. It's the accent. You gotta listen, my friend.
Buds.
Look, I'm here for it. Like the Missouri fragrance, the state fragrance of smoked meat. Like I'm all about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm so surprised how many people like remember the little catchphrases things. Yeah.
It was just it was so strong.
That was so fun.
And you're great. You're a great interviewer too. But it was a highlight from last year.
Oh, we're getting back.
Speaking of
We're getting back to
interviews,
stage next year.
actually, we got to start.
Oh yeah. They're gonna kick us out.
They're kicking us out at 7 o'clock.
Oh, I like
Kicking
that.
us hard at 7.
Can you look as we're like mic'd up? Have you seen these videos we've been doing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are doing one.
Look at this. Look at these cameras.
Oh, yeah, hold on. I was like,
Dude, the visuals here are going to be insane.
dude, the visuals are going to be.
Because look at this. We've got
No,
so.
no,
we've got
I gotta make myself look good.
We gotta.
He's like, hey, this is really awesome. Get the hell out of here.
This is why I need him. Because I would wait. I know. Because I just shoot the breeze with you guys the whole
All right,
time.
you guys have fun.
Okay.
see you
We'll see you over there tonight.
Thank you again, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
Bryce,
but
thanks, man.
Oh, you bet. Great seeing you.
by the
Yeah,
way, I do
likewise.
appreciate this. Thank
What do you mean?
Doing this, asking me to do this. I appreciate it. I think it's a huge thing. Yeah, I like it. I thank you for it. I'm serious. Yeah.
Well,
As in, you have a lot of options.
I don't have many people who did what you did,
That's
and who
true.
like when you finished with Senra and you and I first met for the first time. You came up and gave me a big old hug, and it was just like meeting people who speak your same language,
Exactly.
especially in this world. You know what I mean?
I get it.
So I feel every bit as grateful for you taking time to do it because I think you've lived it. You know,
Yeah.
we're just out there trying to evangelize it, but you've actually done it.
Yeah. But it's still a privilege. It's still great for somebody to want to share your story. I think it's a pretty cool thing. Yeah.
Well, I think it's an important story, and I think it's one where I think there's a reason. Take the numbers out. There's a reason it's resonating so much because I think in a lot of respects, you are very much the American dream for a lot of like the promise of it.
Yeah.
I think you've also doing what you did with the resource you had. Most people would think that was impossible.
Yes.
Especially in
And now you sound like my wife.
category you went after.
She's like, this is why you need to tell the story because it's going to encourage other people. Like she tells me that.
Just today here at this event, I've probably had a dozen people come up and say, just like what happened here, that talk last year filled in, it either made people feel not alone, that the way they thought about building their business wasn't crazy for them to think that way, and that maybe in some ways they were actually riding this wave of a new way to be thinking about and doing it. Now you've lived it.
Yeah. I also believe that in the last year, because I've only really begun doing more public stuff in the last year.
And this was all the encouragement of your wife.
And my team.
Okay.
My wife and my team.
Okay.
And I've actually grown. So one of my weaknesses in building a large company was I'm a one-on-one communicator. It doesn't scale.
Yeah.
You're going to need to find a way to scale to one-to-many as a company gets bigger. And you only have two ways to do it. You can write it or you can say it. If you can do both together, even better. And that was a skill I had to really struggle with and learn. And I can already tell that I've gotten better at that. And I think that's actually very important for leaders as they want to scale their impact. So that's one way that I've actually grown by doing this. The other way is I've had to actually go back and think about mistakes and things that happened and ask people, hey, do you remember when XYZ was going on? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Totally.
And pull new lessons out of it that have actually affected the studio and how I think and stuff like that. So it's almost like improving a skill set you haven't practiced.
Totally.
And then the last thing is I've actually found that I do enjoy public speaking. I get very nervous. I'm not a shy person. That's not the issue.
No, I know this about you.
Yeah, I think I'm afraid of public failure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not shyness, it's more a fear of public failure. But I've noticed that it's like building a muscle. So I still get nervous, but the moment I get going, I'm in a zone. Like I'm in flow,
Yeah.
and I've actually enjoyed it. So now I'm actually like, I actually added speaking to my personal website. Like, I'll come speak at stuff.
When you're feeling the most flow, what are the messages that you're relaying that feel really natural
When
and good
I'm talking to entrepreneurs about what it takes to succeed, like when I feel like I'm adding value to the entrepreneurial journey, my story actually has become very boring to me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually the weakest point for me, is when I'm just telling my story. But when I'm talking about the lessons from the story, I get so much energy. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you said you went back and you did the work to really try to explore what that experience was, the failures, the things you got right, talk to people who were around, were there any kind of aha moments or surprises as you started to reflect back kind of post-transaction?
Not really.
Okay.
I think there were more confirmations.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
What
there were
were
more
the things that were...
like sometimes you totally forget how the early days were, and you've made up your version of the early days, and then when you actually have to tell the story and you want to be accurate, you're like, hey, this was what we were doing, right? And I'm like, yeah, that was what we were doing. Like, do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's stuff like that, you know. It's things like that. Like one of the early guys that worked for me, Travis, he had never, like, people will ask me, hey, marketing, how did you guys do marketing, you know? And I had this idea of how I did marketing, and then we started building the team. But that's not what actually happened. So Travis, I actually hired him. He became the second marketing guy after me.
Okay.
But Travis, I actually had Travis to do support, which I had forgotten. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was just this really sharp guy that I was like, okay, come on the team. And I don't like the burden of customer support. You're going to take it over for this reason. So when I would get on calls, people would ask me, because it's healthcare, so they're worried, they're concerned. Are you in America? Are you an American? Because of my
Sure,
accent.
of course, yeah.
And sometimes it was killing my deals. So I said, Travis, you're an American. You're going to start doing these calls from now, along with your support work.
Right.
But then Travis was also who I started handing over some of the marketing tasks to, and I'd kind of forgotten. Yes, we did build out the team, but we actually kind of started with Travis.
Oh,
It
that's
was
so
becoming this
fascinating.
like jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're even more like cutthroat than I thought we were. Like, we didn't just go out and build out this marketing team. Like, you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes. A little bit more organic than that.
Exactly.
Huh?
Yeah. So things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just very interesting. Yeah. But
Are you all part of the interview? Or no?
Yeah, we got
During the interview?
we and you need us out of here at 7, is that right?
Yes, Eddie will be here till 7.
Oh, terrific. You guys are the best. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
so has he started?
Oh yeah, we've been recording the whole time.
Oh, you've been recording the whole time?
Yeah.
That's funny.
This is how we
I
do
didn't
it.
know that.
We just trick you into starting to talk. That's it. You know, I think most people just dive right into an interview and have very specific questions. This is more just kind of a conversation
better,
to hear.
actually. Yeah.
You know, kind of what the thinking was that went into it, what the necessity was. Like, I remember a bit in that Senra conversation, I guess the thing that really stuck out to me, which I think a lot of founders flip, is they try to raise a lot of money to go figure out the problem.
Yeah.
And what I heard from you was, when you knew the business well enough that when you had $250K that you raised, you knew exactly what it was you were going to do with it.
So finding the problem is actually critical in the story. But the problem I was looking for was not like, how would I put this? I was looking for the problem to solve. So I did do that.
Yeah.
But I did that before I even created a company.
What put you on the path to finding that problem?
So you have to remember, right after college, I'm saying you have to remember like you were there.
I was there. Yeah. No, I remember that.
So right after college, I kind of started this entrepreneurial thing.
Yeah.
With a co-founder who was a classmate.
Okay.
And it failed. We didn't align on vision. We were software consulting.
Oh, okay.
We were doing software consulting.
Yeah.
We were building custom software. But that's not what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to build a product.
Mm-hmm.
He was very, very smart, and he liked the tinkering and the problem solving. And we had some products we had built and all that stuff, but I was looking for that product that would be our key thing. The mistakes I had made, and we both made these mistakes, was I took on some financial risks for the business.
Personally.
Personally.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you were taking out loans. You were okay.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did decide, hey, this is not going to work, we're going our separate ways, those were on me. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of paused the entrepreneurial
And you're just
journey.
out of school. You're in your mid-20s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A few years later,
And what did you do during those few years?
I just kept
took a
working jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, as a foreigner, so as an immigrant,
Yeah.
on H1,
Yep. Any specific kind of jobs you were doing back then?
tech,
Okay.
support, systems engineering,
Okay.
software, all that kind of stuff. So when I picked back up my entrepreneurial journey at the urging of my wife, actually,
Okay.
which I always have to give her credit in this story because, I loved the people I worked with, but I didn't love working in a sense because my passion was entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So she looked at me and said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm always going to be here. You need to go do the thing that we all know you really want to do, which is to go do something. So that was what actually led to me starting back.
Wow.
But when I started back, I was more systematic in my thinking.
Okay.
I had a process of looking for the problem to go solve.
Mm-hmm.
And that process was really, for all intents and purposes, was to go hunt for problems that I could solve.
Yeah.
And in an industry that I wanted to be part of.
Did you leave your job to go on that hunt, or were you
Yeah,
doing
so
this
I
like
left
nights
my
and weekends?
job altogether, and I just became software consulting guy.
Got it. Okay.
So I pretty much resurrected the old business that I still had debt on.
But you were doing it in the service of hunting for new problems, more scalable problems.
I was just a software shop.
Okay.
I was a dev shop, but that was not the business I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
And I said, within the next 5 years, I'll find the thing. So I kind of gave myself about 5 years to find the thing. And I had this filtering mechanism that I had put together. It had to be an industry I could see myself working in for a decade, and I would be happy doing it for a decade. Like I could serve those people for a decade and be happy. It had to be a large market. These were all just from the learnings and everything else. It had to be a large market. It had to be something I could build a team around because I actually functioned more as a team guy. I'm kind of lazy. I procrastinate, all that. So I needed a team.
You knew that about yourself, yeah.
Yeah. So it had to be a team. It needed to be something that I would not immediately require building out a large sales team right out of the gate.
Oh, interesting. Why that?
I didn't know how to sell.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to put together a sales team. so clearly I couldn't go start something that if that's what you need to succeed, then you're kind of screwed. So a team, a large market, a place I could see myself serving for the next 10 years. I didn't need to have a sales team right out of the gate. And I needed to take advantage of the SaaS online trend.
Okay.
Because one of my lessons was you have to find things that are at that inflection point. Like you have to ride the wave. That was one of the conclusions I was kind of coming to.
Yeah.
So whenever I saw a new problem, maybe some company asked me to build X, or I saw something in an industry, or I went to a show or something, I would start looking for problems and trying to do solutions around those problems. But I would also kind of be filtering for
I was going to say, it sounds like you had your checklist that you'd be going down and saying
and sometimes I would forget my checklist. But at a certain point, I would remember again. I'm like,
Is that because you just get excited about a market?
Exactly, yeah. And then I'll be like, what about XYZ?
Were there any that almost got you?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Is that right?
Yeah. I even remember I was talking to a fellow entrepreneur that's built a very successful software company also in Birmingham. And I was like, hey, Tony, do you remember when I came to talk to you about XYZ idea versus what became Theranist? And he had actually forgotten. He's like, yes, I remember that conversation.
That's amazing.
Exactly. So, but I would always that became my North Star. Like
Yeah.
these things have to be. So what ended up happening was a friend asked me to see if I could help a counseling center I was on the board of.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, counseling center? What am I going to do for a counseling center?
Right.
But it was
Did
a
you even
friend, so
know
I
what a
took the-
counseling center was at that
I
point?
did,
You
but I didn't know
okay.
how they worked. I'd never had a therapist in my life.
Sure.
Nothing. Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about mental health. So I went to the meeting, and this is a place I had driven by dozens of times because it was right near the UAB campus.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, and these people are telling me the impact they're having on people's lives, how many people they're seeing every year.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, like these people are doing. So immediately checked the can I serve these people box.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, these are the kind of people I would want to do something for the next 10 years of my life, given the impact they're having. So every time I have those meetings, it's kind of running in the back of
Sure,
my
I could
head.
see it. Yeah.
But then I asked them, I was like, why can't you just go buy something? Like, just go buy software.
Because they wanted to bring you in as a consultant to build something for them. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, you wouldn't be able to afford for me to pretty much build what you're describing, which is pretty much a practice management software.
Right.
Like, I'm like, I don't think you guys would want me to go build your practice management software. They're like, yeah, we've checked this, we've checked
Well, it
this.
seemed like there were a million practice management
Yes,
options,
there were
right?
a gazillion of them.
Okay.
But here was the thing. These smaller practices, not hospital systems, not community mental health centers, these practices and nonprofits were going through the SaaS transition.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was happening.
Okay.
They could see how cool Facebook looked for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were transitioning from the QuickBooks on a CD to QuickBooks Online.
Yeah.
And they wanted that experience for their practice. That was really what was happening. So I said, let me go see what's out there and I'll be back. Because I was thinking, this is crazy. I'm not going to build something for them, but I want a solution for them. So I do what I always do in that situation. I go online and I see a lot of the options available for them.
There had to have been some practice, like
There were
SaaS
so
software,
many, yes.
right?
But a lot of the SaaS software available weren't that great.
Okay.
Some of them required implementation.
Okay.
And some of them had this huge implementation fees. Some of them were still like, you have to install it on one computer and that's the computer you use. You know, like.
Amazing. Okay.
But I could also see the ones that would become.
And what year is this?
This was 2012.
2012. Okay.
I could also see the ones that would become a real competition, that were doing it right, if I did decide to do this. But I could also see many people were looking for this. Like you could do a Google search and you could see the search results were large, people searching for practice management software for my practice.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is a trend. There is clearly an upswing, because what was happening was this. So the two trends that the company really rode on was the SaaS evolution trend and the iTech Act. You remember the iTech Act was what led to HIPAA and everything else.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So the government had incentivized hospitals and doctors to move to EHR software, but they did not incentivize your therapist or your counselors.
Yeah.
They didn't incentivize. So they didn't move to the bigger systems and the trendy systems, you know. But they were all going to move to EHR.
Sure.
They were just all going to move to EHR. So that's one. So that trend. The second thing was, you have to remember, this was also the time where insurance policies changed and you had to cover mental health.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So now more people were seeking mental health. So more workload for these practices, and they needed a solution to manage their customers.
And could you see that at this one practice, that like their practice was
picking
picking
as
up?
I was trying to find a solution for them.
Right.
I didn't know anything about
I
any
love
of
this. The first 6 months, you're sitting there doing
This is
everything
not
you
even
can to
6
make sure they're
months.
not
This
a
is just
customer.
a couple weeks. No, this is not even 6 months. This is, I had one meeting and then I'm like, hey, let me go see if I can find something for you.
Right.
But you have to remember, I was always doing research for what should I go build.
That's right.
So now I'm looking at all this. So I could just see that, oh, there may be something here. I wasn't sure, but I was like, there may be something here. Clearly, people are looking for solutions. And clearly, it's checking my box of riding a trend, looking for things that are at inflection points and things like that. So I went back to them and I said, these are options. I think we kind of liked each other now.
Yeah.
These are options.
Well, imagine at this point, they're trusting you a lot,
Yes.
right? Because at that point, if you just wanted to sell them a consulting gig, you could have done that a long time ago.
Yeah, and I'm a local boy.
Yep.
And my friend is on their board, you know.
I know your southern accent betrays you every time.
This lower Alabama accent, you see here, LA accent. So I was like, here are options. Or I could build you something that you can use with the intention of I'll build something else that you will pay me monthly for. So you can be my almost like my pilot partner,
Yeah.
which they did. They said, okay, they had a small amount of money. So I built them,
What kind of budget did they have back then?
not a lot.
A couple $1,000
Yeah.
or something. Okay.
So I just built them a simple note and scheduling software. But
All on your own.
yeah.
Okay.
Then I went off and I started building the actual product.
Okay.
And I was talking to them, learning about the industry for them, learning the challenges, all that stuff. Eventually, I built a software. So we were at the hospital having our first child. And there was no name for this thing yet, by the way.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have one pilot customer with, yeah.
And I still had all my other side projects that I was doing for different companies, right? But I wasn't making money from this because I had no intention of really building a dev shop.
Right.
So this was not some thriving business. Like,
Was it at least enough to cover your debt?
no. My wife was our savior.
So she's working.
She's working.
She's working.
full-time,
She's
full-time
covering.
job,
Wow, that's amazing. Okay.
So I look at her while she's having a brand new baby in her hand, and I'm telling her, this mental health thing, I think this is it. This is the thing. And
You're in the delivery room.
yeah, I believe so. If my memory serves me well, you know. Because you have to remember,
That's
we were in the
amazing.
thick, this was now 2 years into the, so I went full-time in 2011.
Okay. So you're 2 years into this.
So this is 2012.
Right.
So this was.
But I
2
love
years.
that she's your partner in this too.
She-
Like you're
she's totally
bouncing
my
every
partner.
idea
She's the
off
best
of
thing
her.
that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
She named the company Theranist. If I had named that thing, it would be a terrible name. Yeah, so the product was called Theranist.
Yeah.
So she actually gave it the name. So I went back and I started building the software.
So did you name the baby and the company at the same time?
You know, the baby was already born.
Baby was
so
already set.
Baby had the name. But so I went and I pretty much built the product, put them on the new platform. So that this one counseling center, put them on the new platform in April of 2013.
Okay.
So now I'm like several months into the journey. I'm
This is,
trying to
and it's
raise
grown
money.
up from like basic note-taking app and
Yeah,
a few things.
I've
Now it's a
kept
more
on,
full.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm trying to raise money
Okay.
for Theranist now.
Okay.
Nobody's giving me anything, right?
What kind of pushback were you getting? What were the
Well-
no's? And was this mostly fundraising around Birmingham, or was
Yeah,
this
around Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had people who believed, and they were introducing me to people.
Mhm.
So I had some people who were like, hey, you know, we'll
But
keep
it was one of those
connecting.
like find me a lead investor.
Yeah, I didn't have any connections,
Sure.
really. I didn't know anybody, you know. And Birmingham is a place where people will help you because you're 1 degree of separation from people that help.
Yeah.
So people were willing to help, but
Yeah.
they can't force you to write a check.
Right.
Some of the objections were, you have no healthcare experience, dude. Like, so I can't blame those people. Like,
If that's a filter, for sure, right?
yeah, they were like, you've never done healthcare. You've never run a successful startup.
Mm-hmm.
You're also telling us you're not going to hire a sales team. You have to remember, this is a healthcare city.
Right. They know.
They know healthcare.
Yeah.
Although they don't know this healthcare because they know healthcare systems and hospital systems, and they're like, this guy thinks he's going to build a software and people are just going to come online and sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I know that's true because I know the SaaS
Yep.
trend is happening, but they don't know that because they're stuck in the traditional healthcare process. So those were some of the reasons people were passing.
How much were you trying to raise back then? This is 2013, 2014.
Yeah, I probably was
Like $1
trying
million
to raise. No, I was probably trying to raise 500K
Okay.
or something.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. But I ended up raising $250,000.
Okay.
So in April, I put them on the system, and I had my second counseling agency.
And did your original agency introduce you to the second one?
The original agency did not introduce me to the second one, but they gave me credibility with the second one.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I met the executive director of the second one at some Rotary event, like Rotary Club event. And I spoke to him, and he said, okay, come see me. And then I told him, hey, I'm doing this with those people, you know. Like, so they kind of
Rotary
gave me
Club
credibility.
event. This is not Silicon Valley.
No,
my man.
no. They kind of gave me credibility now. This is not Silicon Valley, yeah. So I went to see him. His team played around with the software, and they were like, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have this. We're going to need it for how we work. And I was like, well, I can build those things for you. I'm going to expedite building those things. but it's going to cost you X dollars. George, his name is George. George looks at me and is like, look, Shegun, anything above $1,000, I have to go to my board for approval because it was a non-profit agency. I was like, George, it's $1,000. Give me the freaking money and let me go my way. I'm going to build these things anyway. If I'm gonna, so I'll expedite it. So I got
you knew the credibility at that point was way more valuable than any dollars they were going to give you.
Yeah. So I went and they became the second like pilot customer. And that was it.
Well, what a valuable one, because they're able to point out all the things it doesn't do that they need it to do.
So that was how we built the software. Now it's credit cards to run the company because now it's becoming my focus, right?
Yeah.
I have to hire people to finish the other projects I had.
Oh, you'd already sold. Okay. All your energy, you can't walk away from those projects. All your energy is going into the software.
It's not the right thing to do. Yeah. I ended up connecting with some guys out of Eastern Europe that I could tell they were good developers. I kind of found them through like Stack Overflow and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So they started taking the projects that I had to kind of finish it. I wasn't trying to get new projects. Now this is the thing I want to focus on. So they were doing those projects for me. But I have to survive and I have to build this thing. So that means I took on debt, like credit cards. Then I took out my 401k. Because now I'm trying to build a business and everything.
What's going through your head at this point? Like you're taking a lot of risk.
I was more interested in what was going through my wife's head.
Well, that pillow talk must have been crazy back then.
She was actually totally supportive. So, although later on she told me I was scared, but I didn't want to discourage you.
Right.
So that was kind of how I was sustaining the family, paying debt that we had, and paying these guys that were doing the work.
So at this point,
I was also really bad at being a consultant. I always experienced scope creep, and I never charged more for it.
Of course, right.
So I was always losing money on those projects. And I think part of why I was losing money on those projects was also because that was not where my heart was.
Sure, of course.
So that wasn't also going very well.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to experiment with ads. I'm trying to do different things to start growing the Terranist.
Oh, because you'd already seen the search traffic that was coming in for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I've built out a landing page. I've built out a website.
Yep.
When I launched in April for that first customer, I also kind of launched
the website, the brand, everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I'm trying.
So there's a buy now button on this.
Subscribe.
Okay. Subscribe.
You know? Yeah. So now I'm trying to experiment with paid ads and all that stuff. And then I realized, you know what?
And you're doing this on credit cards.
I'm doing this on credit cards.
Crazy.
It's crazy. It was crazy. My world was do the projects during the day, talk to all those few projects that I had and the customers, and then at night do a lot of Terranist work. That was a lot of what I was doing.
With the new baby in the next room over. Yeah.
And I would just work all night.
Did those ads start working?
I could kind of start seeing what was working, what was not working.
Okay.
The other good thing was I created my own tribe of founders locally in Birmingham. All of us were kind of in this cohort of founders trying to build stuff. So we were comparing notes, like, hey, what channel is working for you? What are you doing? So that was very helpful because I didn't know what I was doing.
And did that just happen organically, or is that one of you took the initiative?
So we were all in this
put some
building called Innovation Depot.
Oh,
that was like an incubator type building.
Got it.
Where you could take...
Just lots of startups could grab a desk here.
Exactly. So we had offices near each other and things like that. So we all started talking to each other and comparing notes. That was very, very helpful. Like very, very helpful because there was so much I didn't know. This is why knowledge is so powerful. I picked up this book, Start Small, Stay Small, Rob Walling.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That was also very helpful.
Okay, the microcomp for all.
Yeah, so a lot of those things just kind of helped me navigate that process.
Were you attracted to that ethos of like start small, stay small, bootstrappy,
It's not like I was attracted to it. It's just what I was doing.
Yeah, right.
It was where I had found myself.
Yeah.
So I needed to learn what I needed to learn. Yeah.
Right.
I believe knowledge is very powerful. Like I've always believed, like the way to shorten the distance from where you are to where you want to go is to increase the things you need to know to get there. So experience is very expensive. Learning by information is very cheap.
Yeah.
So every time I'm always trying to say, can I learn this thing just by learning versus by experiencing? Now, experience has its place and it's very important, but so I always look at books and people as a resource for learning. I think there's a lot of wisdom in concentrated knowledge. You start seeing relationships, you pull out insights. Having that tribe where we also shared knowledge and shared experiences was another form of learning that was also very helpful.
Yeah.
And that was it, really. And we just kept trotting along. But I got to the point where I was like, it's pretty clear to me that if this thing fails, it'll fail because I don't know how to sell it. It's not because I don't know how to build the software.
Yeah.
That was when I decided my primary job here is to find a way to build this thing. But I don't have money to go hire a marketer. So I was like, let me see if I can become good at demand generation.
Yeah.
And I went to those same guys and told them, hey, you're going to start helping me build the software. I don't have money to pay you, but I'll pay you gradually.
These are
Huge
your
partners.
Eastern European guys. Okay.
Yeah, so I was paying them a little bit at the time. They were letting me kind of stretch it out.
Yeah.
You know, like when I would pay them, they had almost become like, we had become
It
like
sounds
brothers.
like you're sending them projects. Yeah, you've got
we had
your own
become like
project.
brothers,
Yeah.
So they started helping me build the software. I would do things on the edges in the software, but they were primarily building the software, and I was focused on the marketing. So I started learning, going deep on search engine optimization and demand gen and things like that. If I couldn't track it, I didn't do it. So I didn't do trade shows, which was probably a bad idea. But I couldn't measure it, and I didn't know how to do it.
Sure.
But-
You behind a booth
I-
for 3 days.
That's not my thing. And you know me, I'm not out there trying to talk to everybody. Eventually, Dan, who was a local entrepreneur in town, kind of heard that I was trying to raise money for this thing. And I had crossed paths with Dan through the consultancy business.
Okay, so you've done
See,
some work with Dan on
I actually didn't end up doing any work with
Oh,
him.
okay.
But Dan was not in tech.
Okay.
But I had crossed paths with Dan because Dan had wanted me to build the software for him. Dan ran some kind of a franchise business.
Okay.
But the main franchise decided they were going to solve that problem. So Dan and I ended up not doing the project, but we had become to know each other. And I think Dan and I also bonded a little bit because we both kind of were people of faith and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Dan calls me and he's like, hey, I hear you're trying to do this. I'm like, yeah, Dan, I'm trying to raise money for this thing. And Dan writes me a $75,000 check. It was my first check.
Wow.
So this was like 8 months into this.
Right.
It was my first check. And it was like, you're a very smart guy. This may go to zero. The next thing you do, let me know if this doesn't work out.
A real vote of confidence.
But I saw it as a vote of confidence.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because he's
Absolutely.
telling me, even if it doesn't succeed, I believe in you
That's
enough
right.
that I'm going to do the next thing with you.
Yep. Yep.
So I was like, if this doesn't succeed, I'm paying you back your 75K. Whatever I got to do, if I have to deliver 1 million pizzas, like you can't tell me that.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't
There's a
feel
real
the strong
loyalty there.
sense of obligation to you. Yeah. So it was the first check. And then the Goodriches, Timberline, which is an investment firm in Birmingham. They were early in really, like, they were one of these successful families that were beginning to take up venture investing, venture capital investing
Okay.
in Birmingham. They were my next big check. They put in 125, I think.
Okay.
And then,
So you're
was
sitting on
somebody
sitting on 200K then.
yeah, so this was over a period of like, so they came in like 2 months after that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did they get the same valuation Dan did?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So they came in like the last 2 final checks, their check and a $25,000 check came in 2 months after that. So
Okay.
then was like 8 months in, and then they came in 2 months in.
That's
so it took me
amazing.
10 months to raise 250.
Yeah.
But that whole constraint really helped me know what was growing and what was not growing, how the business was doing. You know, it was clear I had a good market. I was in a good market. And I think the market makes the entrepreneur.
What
have
was
to
clear to you
execute.
that you were in a good market at that point?
Steady engagement by my users of the software.
So they were using it every day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Continuous trickling in. For the little resources I could put in,
Mm-hmm.
people were continuously trickling in. Traffic increasing with my search engine work. Like things were trending in the right direction. All I needed was fuel. So this was like fuel. Like I was like, oh, I know where to put this. I know
Right.
where to pour this fuel. So I did that. The thing kept growing, and it just took off from there.
And where did you pour it initially?
A lot of the paid ad channels that were working
Okay.
was where I put it.
Yeah.
So search engine, we kept doing search engine. Then I could also get people to help me with content also. So it was really mostly content and paid ads. That was really where we put it. for search engine and then for the paid channels that were working. So the other place I could put it was I could hire somebody to take some of the support work, so I could do more demos.
Yeah.
So we could increase demos. We started doing webinars. So, I could increase the team by that 2 additional people and everything else. And we just kept going from there. So I would say the 3 primary places were ads, talent to help with search engine and content, and then multiplying myself with people. Yeah, those were the places. But it wasn't just randomly hiring people. I
was going to say, how did you decide who to hire, when to hire? Because at that point...
Well, I knew where I was being stretched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing everything.
I was doing everything,
Yep.
so I knew where I was being stretched. So
I would imagine at that point, too, having done all those jobs, you knew what good probably looked like or what you needed.
Yes. And I also knew how to give people power, how to give them control, because I knew what they needed to do the job effectively. So I knew, hey, if I just give them guardrails, and these are the guardrails, and I give you power to execute, as long as I've hired the right person, they will move faster than me. I didn't need to make all the decisions. I believe in really just giving power to the people closest to the decision making, and I was able to do that because I kind of knew the elements that were going to be included in their decision making. And we just moved very fast. We made decisions very fast.
You say we. Who's we at this point?
Now that we're having a team,
Got it.
we could make
and you're bringing your
decisions
team into these decisions too.
Exactly.
At that point. Okay.
And if things were simple, they knew they could act and just move forward. The number one goal was make the customers happy.
Was that hard for you to give up that much control?
No.
Okay.
No. Like, again, speed is the secret weapon here. You have to be in the details as the leader. You definitely have to be in the details. You have to set the pace, but you have to let people grow. You have to let people feel a sense of ownership. And that was what I was just about in the early days. I was about, you come in here, you're going to feel like you're having an impact. You're not just going to be an order taker.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't interested in just order takers. So that actually helped create a culture of, we're going to win, we're going to move very fast.
You're hiring these people, though, in Birmingham, Alabama. That's
I was
not
hiring
exactly
from anywhere I could find great talent.
So were you fully distributed as a team? Oh, interesting. Okay.
I didn't have the money to say I was just going to hire from Birmingham.
Sure.
Yeah. So I would find great people wherever I could find them.
Well, I would imagine a lot of the talent that you were after wasn't in Birmingham.
Some of them were, but they would just be more expensive.
Sure. Yeah.
Or if the talent wasn't in Birmingham and I want to bring them to Birmingham, that can become more expensive. So we built out teams from wherever we could find them. And that really helped us. We thought globally about talent. Like, we just took a broad approach to talent. I wasn't interested in building this large local team size that would make me feel good every day I go into the office and I say, oh, I didn't really care about that. Like, I just cared. Are we getting the work done? Are we making the customers happy? And that was it. So we could experiment very fast. And the team just really believed in what we were doing. They believed in the people we were serving because we could tell these people were doing great work. They were obviously affecting and impacting people's lives.
Yeah.
So there was a sense of mission. And I think that's always very important for a startup. I think startups with a sense of mission tend to outdo those that don't have a sense of mission. So there was a sense of mission.
How did you capture that mission internally? Like, how did you vocalize it?
I would say we probably could have done a better job on building culture. And this caught up to us later on when we were really large, that we didn't memorialize that culture enough. But the way we captured it was just in the way we treated each other. Everybody knew that you had responsibility for your work. You could be vulnerable with each other, and you could not use that vulnerability against each other. So,
fascinating.
People knew they could be firm with each other and vulnerable with each other for what they were weak at and what they couldn't do well. But they knew that other person wasn't going to turn around and play politics with their vulnerability. So that really helped us get to the source of problems very quickly. Because if I'm having a problem, I'm not going to try hide it.
Yes, that's right.
Because I'm just going to tell you, hey, this is not working. And then everybody's going to try to figure out how they will help me.
But being able to do that in a way that a lot of people would feel incredibly vulnerable, and that it would then get used against them, or that they would be seen as a problem Sounds
So
like you were able to
you
flip
as
that.
the leader have
You turned
have
it into
to
a superpower.
you have to set the tone that we will not use people's vulnerabilities against them. So I think that was very impactful for us. I believe that the team knew I cared about them individually, personally. I would not accept crappy work, but I cared about you as a person. And I think they all cared about each other as people because of that. Like you set the tone, you set the pace, and the team kind of follows the tone and pace that you set. And when we were small, that was easy. Every new person could clearly see it and they just bought into it. And the biggest mistake we probably made on the culture side was what you now do when that is the case is you turn it to rituals. And we didn't ritualize it enough.
Okay.
So if you think about American culture, what makes the culture? The culture is the things you celebrate and ritualize. So in America, it's barbecue on the 4th of July. It's fireworks on July 4th.
Yeah.
Those are the rituals that set the culture. And it's the same for a company. Your culture are the things you celebrate, the things you reward, the things you punish, and the rituals you have around them. And you memorialize those in different kinds of ways, in written form, in celebratory form, in all kinds of form. And we probably didn't do enough of that. So when we got bigger and bigger, we now had to go back and kind of adjust. So those would be one
Do you
of the
think not
lessons.
memorializing them was in part because of how distributed and remote the company was?
I think it was part of it.
Okay.
I think it's a harder thing to do in highly distributed teams.
Right.
It's a harder thing to do. And it takes a special skill set in highly distributed teams. I think because I was also an individual communicator, I was a one-on-one communicator, that probably also affected it because as we grew, I needed to speak one-to-many more frequently, with more impact, and I had to learn that skill. So that was part of it. So those were some of the things that we kept doing. And then a few years in, we were just moving at a pace that was just unbelievable. I think we were so fast. We were moving very, very fast.
When did that shift? When did you really start to feel both personally and then probably financially at that point too? Because I would imagine that $250K
In that second year.
Second year. Okay.
Because the momentum once we raised the money just really picked up very, very fast. And because we had really been very disciplined.
And is that because you nailed the SEO stuff? You were able to generate
nailed the paid ads, we nailed the SEO.
Okay.
We had high product velocity on the team. Like the customers would always be like, man, I just complained about this thing last month and now you guys have built it, blah, blah, blah,
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so all that was just clicking, which was very, very helpful. So with that, you could just see the growth was just on and on and on. And could we have spent more to grow? Maybe. Sometimes I think, and I was like, well, we were very focused on being resilient and profitable. Maybe we could take more of those profits and even have grown faster. Maybe. Who knows? That's an alternative universe. I don't.
Did you debate raising more money down the road as not secondary, but as like growth equity? No. Why?
No. Maybe I was scarred from my first experience
Yeah, I
raising
get that.
money.
Yeah.
That was part of it. The second was I didn't think we needed it. Like the company was producing enough resources for its own growth. So those were probably the two primary things. Did I, at some point, think we needed a sophisticated partner? Yes.
Okay.
Which was what led us to the private equity route. Two things led us to that route. Number one was, you have to think about this. I still had nothing to show for the success, personally.
Because you're not paying yourself anything.
No.
Yeah. You're putting it all back into the company.
Yeah, I still lived in the townhouse that we were in with my wife, and now,
2 or 3 kids?
2 kids. So I was like, if something happens to this business, I'll be down to zero. And now my ambitions were huge because I could see what was possible. I could see how big the business was.
Oh, that's interesting. When did that change? When did like the
all
scope
of, it
of your
just
ambition
kind of
change?
changed in that second full year.
Okay.
Because I could see the growth, I could see the trajectory. We were hiring people, we were adding customers, we were doing it all very profitably. But I could also see the market. You have to remember, this was an industry with a lot of competitors.
Right.
And we were stealing their customers. So I was like, okay, we could do more of that, number one. Number two, it's a highly fragmented market. So the thing about mental health is the needs of the different aspects of mental health are different enough that they need different applications.
Yeah.
So we wanted to break into all these different markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, acquisitions can be a strategy here, right? We could acquire our way into some of these other markets.
Mm-hmm.
We also wanted to enhance our margins by doing some strategic things. Like, I was like, why am I spending all this money on freaking clearing houses that I'm paying, and they're the middlemen, like
Right.
when you submit claims to insurance, you submit the claims to the clearinghouse submits the claims. I'm like, can I go find my own clearinghouse? Like I had all these crazy things. I was like,
I was going to
what's
say,
stopping
because
me?
you've already confessed to being a Scope Creek king, right?
Yeah.
Like you love, as an entrepreneur, I would imagine your eyes just get wider and wider and wider.
Exactly. And and you had applied behavior analysis. And
Yeah.
I was like, I want to get into the ABA space.
Right.
It's part of mental health. But I was like, I shouldn't do this before unless I de-risk myself personally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's how I should have thought about it, but it was part of how I was thinking
Sure.
about it. I was like, I need to de-risk myself personally
Mm-hmm.
so that my wife and kids can sleep easy at night.
So this is now what, 3 years in?
This was 3.5 years.
Okay.
In. Yeah, 3.5 years in.
And at that point, had you been attracting
About 3 years
interest
in.
from private equity?
Yeah, we were attracting interest pretty quickly. After the first year, we're already attracting
Wow, is that right?
interest.
Okay.
And VCs, but I just ignored everybody. Yeah, both private equity and VC. I just totally I never responded to any email. I never answered. I just was
Had you followed that like Silicon Valley venture world?
more and more now.
Okay. But at a certain point, you're thinking it would be almost irresponsible not to
And
lock in
something
some
else also
profits
happened
here.
in the business.
Oh, what was that?
We had an event where somebody was trying to defraud us.
Oh, okay.
That cost us. It didn't end up costing this much, but it cost us about $1 million. It would have pretty much cost us $1 million. And that also, so it became a combination of fear and opportunity.
Sure.
Because I was like, what if this wasn't $1 million issue and it was a $20 million issue?
Yeah.
Like,
Who's on the hook for that?
exactly. We didn't miss a beat.
Sure.
We had so
Yeah.
much cash.
Right.
Like, the thing happened and we just kept going. But instead of it to create confidence in me, it created fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I had nothing. Right.
Totally.
So
How did you think about managing the cash when you had that much cash?
it was just in the bank.
Was there any idea of how much you'd leave in the business versus take it out? Was there any? No,
I wasn't very sophisticated
okay.
about it.
Yeah. Well, I imagine if you're growing at the rate you're growing and your ambition is getting bigger, your probably main objective is just to keep plowing it back into the business.
To keep
fuel the growth.
hiring, to keep growing,
Yeah.
but doing it in a sensible way. I wanted us to always have really good profit margins.
Yeah.
We were running about a 30% profit margin business, which was pretty good for
great.
a software
Yeah.
company. Our gross margins was around 90%. So it was a very efficient business.
Yeah.
Unbelievably efficient. 2016, most VCs back then would not let you take chips off the table. It's a thing now, but back then it wasn't
it ever
quite as
now?
much a
Yeah.
thing. Well, we're all paying the price now. So I needed somebody that would let me do that.
Yeah.
VCs were not going to
We're not going to let you do it. Okay.
Private equity was.
Okay.
And private equity also understood acquisitions, in my opinion, more than VCs understood acquisitions.
Yeah.
And I felt in mental health, you had to have acquisition as a growth strategy, given the fragmentation of the space.
Okay.
So I was looking for a private equity group that would be willing to play that game with me and join me on that journey, but also let me de-risk. So that was when we did the first recapitalization of the business.
Okay.
I took some chips off the table, brought in private equity.
How much to the balance sheet as part of that?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
So it was all secondary.
Yeah, it was all. We didn't need anything on the balance sheet.
And then you thought, but you at least had a partner.
After that 250, we never put any money on the balance sheet.
That's amazing.
Yeah. There was no recap or stuff we did because we wanted to put money on the balance sheet.
Right.
We never needed it. We just were going crazy after that. Yeah, it was unbelievable. I know.
Was it the relief that you'd hoped it would be personally when you took that, when you had the secondary? Yeah.
Yeah, because now I knew, but the fire was still there because now my ambitions were big.
Sure,
So,
of course.
So then we just continued the journey and, we built a pretty great business and exited. We did another secondary about a year later.
Same group, who did it?
So all of us were like, okay, this thing's gotten big. Let's all also take some chips off the table. I'm not sure that was the healthiest thing for the company, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
It's too short-term thinking, in my opinion. It was great for all of us
Sure.
personally, but I'm not sure that that's how you want to run a business,
Right.
if I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But that was the second time now that I had taken, and by now the company was way bigger. Just in that 1 year, it had gotten
So how
much,
big are
much
we
bigger.
talking about?
Like hundreds of millions.
By year what?
So this was 2018.
So you're 5 years in,
Yeah, and
you're doing hundreds of millions.
no, valuation.
Oh, valuation.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Like
Revenue-wise, it's how big?
on the way to 100, north of 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 5 years.
hmm
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we did that, and then after that we just ran the business, and then I fully exited the business when we sold to KKR in 2021. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't roll or anything. I just sold
Fully
everything
out.
and left. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was really the journey.
That's unique, though. Most people roll, or most people stay around post-acquisition to be a part of it, even as a board member. Why completely unplug?
Well, I don't know how much of this I can say publicly.
So I'm getting a warning. We've got like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's two things, and I would honestly love to come to Birmingham and do one of the like even more extended,
Yeah,
because I think it'd be really, because I think what you're doing down there is really interesting and important.
Yeah.
I would say the two things that I'd be curious to hear maybe a little bit more about is like how your faith played into any of this stuff. I think that I'm a person of faith as well. It's a huge part of how I navigate the world. It's a huge part of the value set that I have in my business and my family. How about for you?
Same. I think the primary source of wisdom for me is it comes out of my faith walk. Like I think there are certain fundamental principles that if you just take them and you apply them, you end up in a good place.
Yeah.
Right. That's one. And then I think it's also taught me how to treat people with dignity and respect and decency, to be honest with people, and to remember that I have a bigger boss. Sit down, my friend. Like you're not the king in this kingdom. Like,
right.
do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
I think that's always there, and that gives you a different kind of wisdom when you operate life.
Lets you take some of the ego out of what you're trying to get done.
Exactly.
It's not just about you.
You know that God resists the
That's right.
arrogant. Yeah. Arrogance is a path to hell. If you're self-made, you'll be self-destroyed one day.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you will be self-destroyed.
We've seen it so many times.
Exactly, yeah. So for me, those were the things. And I think it made it easier to do this with my family also, with my wife, because we shared the same values.
I love this. Yeah.
So the shared values, shared ultimate purpose, having the same person be the Lord of everything. I'm not the Lord of everything.
That's right.
She's not the Lord of everything.
That's
we
right.
have somebody else that's actually the Lord of everything. And he's either God of everything or not God at all.
That's right.
So exactly. So I think that gives you some insight into how to live a fulfilling life. Our lives didn't fundamentally change. The things that made us happy didn't fundamentally change. No matter how much our lives change around us.
Sure,
Did we
of
stay in
course.
nicer hotels? Yeah, we did that. But it wasn't the source of happiness
That's
or
right.
joy in our lives. Yeah. So I think all those things matter.
I know for me, it puts it into perspective. Any success you have there's a big asterisk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were the things, and I think experience also makes you better over time as a leader, and gaining those experiences over the years definitely has been a good plus for my life. Yeah.
How about for the newer entrepreneurs that you're mentoring now? How much of your story and your journey feels applicable to them, or what parts of your journey do you try to impress on them, especially in this, like there's so much pressure and so much culture
The
built up
biggest thing
around.
I try to impart to them is, number one, be humble. Learn everything you need to learn. Keep your customers first. Build a business to serve, not to raise a freaking round. Like,
Right.
we are servants. We're not money chasers. And the problem I have today is money, even in my journey, was very impactful. But it is in the interest of service to build something so that you can effectively serve people you're committed to serve. It is your job to be creative around how to serve those people.
Right.
Not, where can I get? The most annoying thing are the people that want to raise money just because they can see their salary is about to run out. I'm like, that's not the game we're playing here.
That's right. I always say running out of money is not a fundable milestone.
Exactly.
This isn't it. Yes.
Number one.
You're not
and
here just
another
for a job.
thing is, you really need to remember that you have to find out why you will win. Fundamental to why you will win is why are you different. Whether, like in our journey, for example, this was really critical in our journey. Because there were other competitors, we had to find a differentiation point. And our differentiation point came from how we priced the product.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because we could not meet the feature set one-on-one in the earliest days, and that became clear. But because my two initial customers were non-profits, we had built certain features that were non-profit oriented that others didn't have. So we now matched our pricing to also match the challenge of non-profits. For example, non-profits many times may have part-time therapists. All of our competitors were charging per therapist. The non-profits sometimes struggled with that because they're like, well, you're charging me for somebody that's not really like. So we charged per active customer. So the non-profit, we just tied it to where they saw value.
Yeah.
Because now they're like, oh, I don't care if I have 50 people and half of them are part-time. If you're charging me because I actually have 500 active customers, then I have 500 active customers and I know I'm making money on each customer, so I'm happy to pay you. So we started getting a lot of those larger non-profits. So which is funny because our main competitor was getting the solo practitioners way more than us.
Of course.
But we were getting the larger non-profits way more than them, which is actually higher average revenue per account.
Right.
So it was actually helping us really compete because we're getting a
that's so
higher average
interesting.
revenue per account. Now, did it create problems for us a little bit when we now eventually went to start going after the private practice people? Yes, because the private practice people were like used to that pricing model, and they will always be like, especially the smaller ones. The smaller ones will be like, well, I have 50 active clients, but it's just me, and they do the math and they're like, well, it's cheaper if you just charge for me, stuff like that. Do you get what I'm saying? But you could solve that with discounts. You can solve that with all kinds of stuff. Exactly. So that was.
Well, it goes to what you were saying earlier, which is like, you discover that in service of the customer.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing founders need to realize is your differentiation is how you win. And that differentiation can be from feature set, it can be from pricing, it can be delivery, it can be a combination of all those things. The most lasting differentiator is high quality execution. That's the long lasting. Almost any differentiator people can copy. There are some differentiators. For example, in our case, it would have been hard for our competitors to suddenly say, oh, we charge for active customers, right? It would have been hard. But they could copy everything else. We could copy their feature set. But find the differentiator and combine it with consistent execution that puts the customer first, and you will most likely win. Nobody can guarantee anything in business. So you just want to significantly increase your chance of success.
But why then do entrepreneurs think that the one who wins is the one who raises the most money?
Because that's what the system tells them. And here is the thing. Everybody hears when you raise money and the valuation that you raised money for. This is a message I tell my team all the time. I don't care the valuation somebody raised money for. When they go public or when they sell the company, tell me what they sold for. That's the conversation I want to have with you. So when I sold my company for $1.25 billion, that was not the valuation that somebody gave me money for. That was what I sold it for. There is no point in raising money at 1.25 and then selling the company a few years later for 300 million, which is what happens all the time. But nobody puts it in the news when they sell for 300 million. Even when they put it in the news, everybody has forgotten when they raised at $1 billion.
That's right.
So this is the lesson I tell the team and the founders. Don't be enamored by the valuation at which somebody raised. Be impressed when somebody is a public company and the market has now put a value on their business that they can actually say, if somebody else wants to buy that business, they have to pay that much. Or if somebody buys that business, that's what they paid. I'm like, that's the real value of the business. All this raising nonsense that we're all yelling about, there's meaning in it. But you're putting more meaning that you need to put in it because you're now thinking that's $1 billion business. Not quite yet. So that's the thing. It's what we celebrate. It's the culture. You remember what I said culture is?
Yep.
It's what you celebrate, what you reward, and the rituals. So what are the rituals? You get in the press, you get in the news, you become the star and everything else. So yeah, it becomes the culture because it's what's rewarded. But if you don't get rewarded for crazy valuations and you really only get rewarded for selling a company at that valuation, the culture will change. Exactly. Yeah. So that's really it. And
Right.
that's kind of the message I try to give to founders. There's nothing inherently wrong in raising money, but that's not the real value creator.
Seeing the amount of sacrifice that you were willing to put in before you even took an outside check, the level of commitment that you had gone through, it feels so rare. Part of why I think this is so relevant right now is I think you're a beacon for a lot of people because I think yours as a path feels so much more aligned with the values people have, the timelines and problems people want to be working against.
Yep.
I mean, this was awesome.
Thank you.
This is so great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're literally kicking us out of the field.
Okay.
I'll sit. How's this?
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.